Welcome back. Let's start this section by learning about array destructuring. So, as I said in the intro, in this session, we are basically going to continue learning basic syntax and basic JavaScript features. But now, with a focus on more modern JavaScript, and the theme of this session will be to simulate a food delivery application. So, in specific, it is one Italian restaurant, which is the starter data here that we already have in our starter files. So this is called Classico Italiano. So I already open up the starter file here for this project. Okay. So go ahead and open up this starter file. So after that, now let's learn complex topics. Like one, we are going to dive into this session is the really best in isolation. So this way you can understand exactly what I'm trying to teach you, and without thinking about the other five things at the same time. So I'm isolating just this one restaurant and building no user interface. So let's just focus on JavaScript language here. There are also other topics that can be applied to a visual project. That's why in the next section we have a really cool project with an amazing user interface. We are going to learn about array methods. But for now, let's focus on building data structure and modern advanced operators. Again, let's start with array destructing. So destructing is an ESX feature. It's basically way of unpacking values from an array, from an object into separate variables. So in other words, destructing is to break a complex data structure down into smaller data structures like variables. So for arrays, we use destructuring to retrieve elements from array and store them into variables in a very easy way. So let's just start with a very simple array, and if you want to retrieve each one into one variable without destructing, this is how it is done. So we'll write our code here. Let's declare constant a equals to array of 0. So similarly, here it is for B, it is for C here. So an array basically starts with 0, right? So let's go ahead and run our terminal, or else you can go here and click the live. But so here live. So now we'll see here. So this is how we can actually retrieve the three elements. But now with the destructing, we can actually declare all the three variables at the same time. So let's see how it is done. As you can see, now here we'll write one more line of code, console.log x, y, and z. So let's save it. See here, now you have noticed the output difference here. So here we have two different kinds of outputs. So as you can see here, we get two results, 2, 3, and 4. So the element of the array. So basically we write this syntax here, and then it will become the first element of the array. So we have written this syntax, right? This will be the first element of an array. So this element will be the second element, as you can see in this array. So in the constancy, this is the third element, as you can see here, this is 4. So this was declared in the array. So this is here the console.log xyz. Here it is the destructing the array here from the right side. Okay, and of course this looks like an array, but it's really not. It's just declaring assignment. So whenever JavaScript sees this here on the left side of an equal to sign, it knows that it should do destructing. Now when you do this, just don't forget to actually also declare the variable using here the const. Okay, and I also wanted to notice that even though we did destructing, which sounds like a kind of distractive, right? So here we have written console.log array, right? So as you can see here it is coming our output. So the original array is of course not affected. Okay, we are not destroying here the array. We are not only destructing, so we are unpacking it. Okay, let's work a little bit with the data from our restaurant here. So here when we see, we have a couple of arrays actually. So the category is the starter menu, the main menu. So let's take some elements out of the category. So let's say constant of first comma second. Here we'll say restaurant dot categories and console dot log first and second. So as you can see here we got our output. So our output we are just declaring from this restaurant in the categories section. As you can see in this array we are declaring the first element and the second element. So as you can see here these both were printed out. So now we wanted only the first element and the third element from this array. So now let's say that this one in the main category. So let me just turn here this first one into main and this one into secondary. Similarly as here, secondary here. So we have turned into first and second into main and secondary. When we want to print the third element, so here we are declaring first and second, right? So and also we'll declare second element, we'll just give the space. So this is first, second is null, third one we are getting secondary, right? So let me just go ahead and save it. You'll get the output. See, Italian and vegetarian you got, right? So basically this second element, it is here the null value. So it is printing the third element. This is first and third, so it is printing first and third. And now we would like to switch the variables and then without destructing we have to do it like this. Okay, by creating a temporary variable and we would assign one of them to, let's say, main. So here we'll say some constant variable temp equals to main. So here main equals to secondary and here secondary equals to temp. Yeah, here because this gets error, right? So this doesn't work because here we have declared here our constant to be main and secondary, right? So here we need to change this to let, so then only it works. So let me just save it. See here it works. So previously our main main thing should be Italian and vegetarian, right? So here in this case it prints out secondary as first and then main. So here it is showing reverse vegetarian and Italian. So this is how we change the variables from third element to print out first and first element to print out third, right? This works indeed, right? But now let's take this out and that we can do it using destructing. So as I was saying, in order to switch two variables using destructing, we would first start by creating a new array with two variables inverted. So first secondary and then main, and then we can simply destruct them. So main and secondary equals to the destructing of the array. And now we are not using let or constant here because we are simply reassigning the values of the two variables just like we did here. But now we don't need a temporary variables in the middle. Let's check that now. Indeed the result is the same, but it is a lot easier method this way. So for now let me just go ahead and turn this off here, and then here we'll write our code. Here we have to declare in the array, right? So main secondary equals to secondary main. So here console.log main and secondary. See, the output is same as before, as you can see here, right? So this way also we can manipulate the variables change the positions, but by using the destructing, this is a lot more easier. We can do this way also. The output is the same. And let's add another trick with the destructing, is that we can have a function and return an array, and then we can immediately destruct the results into different variables. So it's basically allows us to return multiple values from a function. So let's try that and write a function to order food. So in our restaurant, let's add a method, and I'm going to call it order. So this will be a function and it will accept two parameters. So let's add another trick using the destructing, is that we can have a function and return an array. So here we'll do that. Here we'll say order function of. Here we'll write a starter index and main index. Okay. Here we'll return this dot starter menu, starter index, this dot main menu, main index. Here we'll write console.log restaurant dot order 20. Here we'll say 2 and 0. See, here we got our output garlic bread and pizza. So from our order function, starter index and main index, right? So we have declared here. So let me just explain what we have written here. So here in our restaurant, we have added a method, and I'm going to call it an order, right? So here we just called it. So this will be the function, and it will accept two parameters. So starter index and main index. So one index is for the starter menu, and this menu, and the one index for the main menu. And then the person will order basically by giving the index for each of the menus. So something very simple just to illustrate the point here. Let's say that starter index and the main index. So we'll simply now return this content of arrays basically of by giving indexes. So as I said here, return, right, we are going to return an array, and then we are going to give this statement, this dot starter menu. Okay, and remember, this is the keyword here is set as we learned in the previous section. So we are going to get the position of the starter index, and then we pass into the function. Okay, this makes sense. And then the same with the main menu as well, at the position of the main index that I had passed in here. All right, so of course we are not going to do any destructing here yet. So let's call this order, in fact order restaurant dot order, as we have already called it here. So let's use 2 and 0 we have already used. So as we want the element number 2 from the starter menu, so here the garlic bread. So and then from the 0 the main menu, which is the pizza, as you can see here. So here the pizza is the 0 element. Okay, and from the starter menu we have here the garlic bread. Here in this array we are having 0 1 2, right, this array. So we have declared here this array 0 2, which is garlic bread. Here 0 from main menu, which is pizza. So we are going to receive an array with that. We are going to get an array like this. Now we can simply destruct this constant starter, and then here we declare main. So we are setting here these two, restaurant dot order 2 and 0. So here we are going to console.log. Here we'll say starter, and then main course, because main we have already previously used, right? So it won't take it here in JavaScript, it will give error. So I'm just declaring here as the main course. So here as well, main course I will use. So we could have done this without destructing and still return an array from the function, but this is very handy way and then immediately creating two variables out of one function call. Okay, now that you understand how destructing works, let's take one step further, because what happens if we have a nested array. So let's say nested, and with nested means one array inside another. So let's say that we know here have another array 5 and 6, so an inside array, so an array inside an array. So let me just show you that. Here I'm going to declare constant nested. So here I am setting this as an array 2, 4 and 5, 6. So here we have an array inside an array. Okay, and then we'll declare here a constant of variable I and j. So we don't give spacing here, first and third element only. So we'll set this to nested console dot I comma j. So output, what if we actually wanted all the individual values here? Well, then we should essentially do destructing inside of an destructing. So let me just go ahead and turn this off here, this nested, and then here we'll write how to destruct an array inside an array. So for that we'll declare again constant of I, and then here we'll give the spacing for the second element. We don't want that, so here we'll give j. So in this j, we have here two elements, right? So we'll describe those two elements, j and k. Set this to nested. Here we'll console.log I, j and k. See here, now here we got the same output as before, but in a more better way by using the destructive 2, 5, 6. Here we got the output as similar like before without an array here. So basically we do destructing inside of and destructing. And now to finish this here, there is just another feature of destructing. So we can also set default values for the variables when we are extracting them. So that's going to be very useful in this case. Example, we don't know the length of an array, and then this can sometimes happen in the real world application as well. So if we have an array that is shorter than we might think, and then we might try to unpack the array in a position that doesn't exist. So let me just say here default values. Here let me just declare constant variables p, q and r. Here I am setting this to 8 and 9. Okay, we'll console.log p, q and r. So as you can see here, first for the p value here it is defined in 8, for the q value it is defining 9, for r value we haven't defined any value, right? So it is coming here undefined. Now let's set the default values for this. So for suppose if we say here p equals to 1 and q equals to 1 and r equals to 1, we are setting these values as default. See, now in this case when we log this, here p value it is setting default, but here we are declaring, so it overwrites, and here it is giving 8. And for the q as well, we are giving default 1, it overwrites here and gives 9. For r there is no value assigned here, so the r value 1 here it is printing as it was. For suppose here if we request q is equal to 1, and here if we give 9, as you can see here, for second value here I am declaring null, so here the q is printing out here 1. So this way also it works. So here what we did here was 3 elements of an array using again destructuring. Let's just call them pqr. So this is how we destructure it, an array with the default values. Okay, like I said, This can be useful, for example, when we get data from the API, and so we are also gonna use this one and everything we learned in this lecture and a bit later in this course as well. That's it for this video. Thank you.